Velthorn had worked in the Galactic Concord archives for 300 years. He had classified over 10,000 species during his long career. Some were peaceful plant eaters who built beautiful cities. Others were hunters who had learned to control their violent nature. A few were so primitive they still lived in caves and feared the stars above them. But he had never seen anything like the creatures from the small blue planet. The archives floated in the darkness of space, a massive station that served as the heart of galactic civilization. Here, 12,000 spacefaring species kept their records. Here, new species were discovered, studied, and given their place in the great order of things. Velthorn's job was simple. He received data from survey probes, analyzed the information, and assigned a classification. Green meant harmless. Yellow meant the species should be watched. Orange meant caution was needed. And red? Well, red was theoretical. In 400,000 years of recorded history, no species had ever been given category red. It was reserved for something so dangerous that it could threaten the entire galaxy. Velthorn did not expect to use it. Today, the data came from a probe near an unremarkable yellow star. The star had 8 planets, and the third one supported life. Billions of creatures lived there, but one species had risen above the others. They called themselves humans. They called their world Earth. Velthorn began his assessment with the usual confidence. He had done this thousands of times. He expected to find another simple species, perhaps intelligent enough to build cities, but not yet ready for space travel. He would mark them as yellow, recommend continued observation, and move on to the next file. But as he read the data, his 6 limbs began to tremble. The planet itself was the first problem. Earth sat in a region of space filled with debris. Asteroids and comets regularly struck its surface. The planet had experienced 5 mass extinction events, each one killing most of the life on its surface. And yet, somehow, life had continued. Somehow, these humans had survived. They had not just survived, they had thrived. Velthorn read about their early history. Humans had evolved as hunters on vast grasslands. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor. They were slow compared to other predators. They were weak compared to larger animals. By every measure, they should have died out long ago. Instead, they had become the dominant species on their entire planet. The file explained how they had done it. Humans had developed a hunting technique that no other species in the galaxy had ever used. They would chase their prey across great distances, not trying to catch it quickly, but simply following it. They would follow for hours. They would follow for days. They would follow until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Velthorn felt a chill run through his body. His own species could barely walk for 1 hour without needing rest. The idea of chasing something until it literally dropped dead from tiredness was horrifying. But that was only the beginning. Humans had learned to control fire. This was not unusual. Many species used fire for warmth or cooking, but humans did not merely use fire. They loved it. They gathered around it. They carried it with them wherever they went. They had built their entire civilization around the ability to create and control flames. Most species in the galaxy ran from fire. Humans ran toward it. The file continued with details about their biology. Humans could eat almost anything. Meat, plants, fungi, even things that were mildly poisonous to them. Their bodies could adapt to extreme heat and extreme cold. They could survive injuries that would kill most other species. When their bones broke, the bones healed stronger than before, and then there was the matter of capsaicin. Velthorn had to read the entry twice to make sure he understood it correctly. Capsaicin was a chemical that plants produced to prevent animals from eating them. It caused intense pain and burning sensations. Every sensible species in the galaxy avoided it. Humans ate it for pleasure. They grew special plants to produce more of it. They competed to see who could eat the most painful varieties. Velthorn set down his datapad and tried to calm himself. Perhaps he was overreacting. Perhaps humans were simply unusual, not dangerous. He continued reading. The next section covered their social behavior. Humans formed intense emotional bonds with each other. This was normal for many species. What was not normal was what happened when those bonds were threatened. If someone harmed a human's family, friends, or community, the human would pursue the offender. Not just for days, not just for years, sometimes for decades, sometimes across entire continents. They had a word for this behavior. They called it justice. The Concord had another name for it. They called it species-wide vendetta instinct. It meant that humans, as a collective species, never forgot an offense. They never stopped seeking what they believed was right. Velthorn's hand shook as he reached the section about their pets. Humans kept predators in their homes. Not caged predators. Not controlled predators. Predators that they called friends. They slept beside wolves. They played with small tigers. They taught killing machines to fetch toys and beg for treats. They had turned the deadliest creatures on their planet into companions. Velthorn closed the file. He sat in silence for a long time. Then he opened the classification form and stared at the options. Green, yellow, orange. Red dot his finger hovered over orange. It was the safe choice. It would recommend caution without causing panic. But as he thought about everything he had read, he knew orange was not enough. He submitted his report with category orange as a preliminary classification, but he added a note. He recommended immediate review by higher authorities. High Archivist Moreth received the file within the hour. She was older than Velthorn, wiser, more experienced. She had seen many strange species in her time. But as she read about the humans, her usually calm expression changed to one of deep concern. She did something she had never done before. She escalated the file directly to the Council of 12. The Council ruled the Galactic Concord. They were the representatives of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They rarely met for anything less than a galactic emergency. They met now 12 ancient beings, gathered in a chamber that had not been used in a century. They reviewed the data in silence. They watched footage of humans climbing mountains for fun. They saw images of humans diving into ocean depths where the pressure would crush any normal creature. They read accounts of human doctors cutting open other humans to save their lives. When the presentation ended, no one spoke. Finally, one member of the council rose. His name was Zindro. He was a Velmari, one of the oldest beings in the galaxy. He had lived for 3,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had witnessed the birth and death of stars. He looked at the data about humanity, and he spoke a single word: Deathworlders. The chamber fell completely silent. It was a word from the ancient texts, a word that had not been spoken in millennia. It described something that most species believed was impossible. A species born on a world that should have killed them. A species that had been forged by constant danger into something unbreakable. Zindril sat down, and the council began to debate what should be done about the creatures called humans. The Council of 12 had not gathered like this in living memory. Their chamber was vast and circular, built from metals that had been mined from dead stars. Light filtered through crystal windows that showed the endless darkness of space. It was a place designed to make any being feel small and humble. Elder Zindril stood at the center, his ancient body supported by a floating platform. He was the oldest member of the council, perhaps the oldest being in the known galaxy. His scales had faded from their original purple to a pale gray. His eyes, once sharp, now carried the weight of 3,000 years of memories. But when he spoke about the humans, his voice was strong. Most of you are too young to remember the Deathworld theory, he began. It was developed in the early days of the Concord, when we first began exploring the galaxy. We wanted to understand why some planets produced intelligent life and others did not. He waved one thin limb, and a holographic image appeared. It showed a planet covered in green forests and blue oceans. The image looked peaceful. This is a standard life-bearing world. Mild temperatures, stable geology, low radiation, predictable seasons. Life evolves slowly and safely on such worlds. The species that develop intelligence are usually peaceful. They have never needed to fight for survival. The image changed. Now it showed a planet that looked angry. Volcanoes erupted across its surface. Lightning storms covered entire continents. The oceans churned with violent waves. This is a death world. Extreme conditions. Constant danger. Everything on such a planet is trying to kill everything else. The Concord classified these planets as unsuitable for intelligent life. We believe no thinking species could evolve in such chaos. He paused and let the silence grow heavy. We were wrong. The image changed again. Now it showed Earth. From space, it looked beautiful. Blue oceans, white clouds, green and brown land masses. But Zindril began to list the dangers hidden beneath that pretty surface. Earth has extreme temperature variations. Some regions freeze solid while others burn under constant sun. The planet experiences regular geological violence, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis. The atmosphere produces storms of incredible power. He continued, his voice growing more serious. The planet is regularly struck by objects from space. 5 times in its history, these impacts have killed most of the life on the surface. And yet, life has always returned. Life has always adapted. And from that endless cycle of destruction and recovery, the humans emerged. The council watched footage that had been collected by observation probes. They saw humans climbing the highest mountains on their world, peaks so tall that the air became too thin to breathe. The humans carried bottles of air with them and climbed anyway. They saw humans diving into the deepest parts of their oceans. The pressure at those depths would crush most species into paste. The humans built special vehicles to protect themselves, went down anyway. They saw humans running for hours without stopping, chasing prey, chasing each other, running for what they called fun. They call this recreation, Zindril explained. They call it sport. They challenge the most dangerous environments on their planet not because they must, but because they choose to. One of the younger council members, a being from a peaceful water world, raised a tentacle to speak. They are still primitive, she said. They have only basic space travel. They cannot leave their own solar system. Surely they pose no threat to us. Zindril turned to face her. Tell me, counselor, when your species developed space travel, how long did it take? The counselor thought for a moment. Approximately 40,000 years from our first flying machines to our first starship and the Karathi. Velthorn, who had been invited to observe, answered quietly. 60,000 years. Zindril nodded. The humans built their first flying machine just over 100 years ago. They reached their moon within 70 years after that. They have sent probes to every planet in their system. At their current rate of development, they will have faster-than-light travel within the next 200 years. The chamber fell silent. They do not develop technology at a normal pace, Zindril continued. They share knowledge freely among themselves. When one human discovers something, all humans can learn it. They build on each other's work. They compete with each other to discover more. They are not just intelligent, they are aggressively intelligent. Another image appeared. This one showed humans in white coats, working in a place filled with strange equipment. This is one of their medical facilities, Zindril explained. When a human is injured or sick, other humans will cut open their body to fix the problem. They remove damaged organs and replace them with organs from other humans. They stop hearts and then restart them. They do things to their own kind that most species would consider torture, and they do it to heal each other. The council watched in disturbed fascination. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, on the small blue planet called Earth, a woman named Elena Vasquez sat in a control room filled with computer screens. She was an astrophysicist, a scientist who studied the stars. For years, she had been searching for signs of intelligent life beyond Earth. Tonight, she had found something. The signals were faint, hidden in the background noise of space. But they were there, structured, organized, clearly artificial. Someone was watching Earth. Elena worked through the night, using every tool at her disposal to analyze the signals. By morning, she had decoded enough to understand the basic structure. By evening, she had translated fragments of the messages. What she read made her blood run cold. The signals were reports. Someone out there was studying humanity like scientists studied animals in a laboratory. They were measuring, classifying, judging, and they were afraid. Alina sat back in her chair and thought about what this meant. Humanity was not alone in the universe. But whoever else was out there, they saw humans as a threat. Back at the council, the debate had reached its conclusion. The evidence was overwhelming. Humans were unlike any species the Concord had ever encountered. They were survivors of the impossible. They were adapters who could thrive in any environment. They were relentless hunters who never gave up. They were Deathworlders. The vote was called. One by one, 12 most powerful beings in the galaxy made their choice. The result was unanimous. Humanity was designated. Category red, ultimate threat level, not for what they currently were, but for what they would inevitably become. But the council was not cruel. They did not vote to destroy the humans. Instead, they chose a different path. They would contain them. They would build a barrier around the human solar system, preventing any human vessel from leaving. They would watch and wait. Perhaps, given enough time, the humans would evolve past their dangerous nature. Perhaps they would learn to be peaceful. Or perhaps they would destroy themselves. As so many aggressive species had done before, a fleet of 200 warships was dispatched to the edge of the Sol system, but the Council did not know that. Alina Vasquez had already acted. As soon as she understood what was happening, she had composed a message of her own. She had broadcast it into deep space using the most powerful transmitter on Earth. The message was simple. We know you are out there. We are coming. The words traveled through the darkness at the speed of light, carrying with them a promise that would change the galaxy forever. Admiral Kethrix had commanded fleets for over 2 centuries. He had fought in 3 wars and brought peace to a dozen worlds. He had faced enemies that most beings could not imagine in their worst nightmares. But he had never been given a mission quite like this one. 200 warships, hung in formation at the edge of the Sol system. They formed a perfect sphere around the small solar system, their combined energy fields creating an invisible barrier that nothing could pass through. The barrier was elegant technology, developed over millions of years. It could stop any ship, any missile, any signal, inside the barrier. The humans went about their daily lives, unaware that they had just become prisoners in their own cosmic neighborhood. The first months were quiet. Human spacecraft continued to explore their solar system, visiting the other planets, sending probes to distant moons. They did not seem to notice the barrier. Admiral Kethrix began to relax. Perhaps this assignment would be easy. Then the humans found the barrier. A small probe, sent to study the outer reaches of their solar system, bumped against the invisible wall. The humans investigated. They sent more probes. They collected data. Admiral Kethrix watched their reactions with interest. Most species, when they discovered they were contained, fell into despair. Others raged against the barrier, throwing their primitive weapons at it in futile anger. The Admiral expected the humans to do one or the other. They did neither. Instead, the humans began to study the barrier. They sent dozens of probes to examine it from different angles. They measured its energy signature. They tested its strength. They took samples of the particles it produced. They were not trying to break through. They were trying to understand. Reports arrived on Admiral Kethrix's desk every week from Velthorn, who had become the Concord's leading expert on humanity. Each report was more disturbing than the last. They have identified the basic structure of the containment field, one report said. They are developing theories about how it works. They have recreated a small portion of the field in one of their laboratories, said another. They are testing its properties. They are making progress toward understanding faster than light travel, warned a third report. They have developed new mathematical frameworks that we have never seen before. Admiral Kethrix called a meeting with his senior officers. How is this possible? He demanded. They had nothing when we arrived. They could barely reach their own moon. Now they are approaching technologies that took other species millennia to develop. His science officer, a thin being with large eyes, pulled up a series of charts. They share knowledge, Admiral. When one human discovers something, they publish it. They send it around their entire planet through their information networks. Other humans read it, challenge it, improve upon it. They call it peer review. They call it collaboration. The officer shook her head in amazement. They do not hide their discoveries for personal gain. They give them away freely. And because of this, their entire species advances together. It is incredibly efficient. Then 3. Then 5. On Earth, a new generation had grown up knowing about the barrier. They called themselves the Starbound generation. They knew that alien civilizations existed. They knew that those civilizations had imprisoned humanity, but they were not angry. They were not afraid. They were patient. Schools began teaching new subjects. Children learned about the barrier and how it worked. They studied the fragments of alien signals that their scientists had decoded. They prepared themselves for the day when humanity would finally reach the stars. Velthorn watched this development with growing concern. He had expected humanity to fracture under the pressure of containment. He had expected wars, panic, social collapse. Instead, the humans had united. They had put aside their differences and focused on a single goal. They wanted out. They are not like other species, Velthorn wrote in his reports. When faced with an obstacle, they do not surrender. They do not despair. They become more determined. The barrier has not broken them. It has focused them. He added a warning that made Admiral Kethrix lose sleep. Every challenge we place before them only makes them stronger. During this time, the humans continued to send messages. Not threats. Not demands. Just information. They broadcast their history into space, telling anyone who would listen about their struggles and their triumphs. They sent their art, their music, their poetry. They shared their scientific discoveries, their mathematical proofs, their philosophical ideas. One transmission in particular caught Admiral Kethrix's attention. It was old, recorded decades before the barrier was even built. A human named Carl Sagan stood before an image of his planet and spoke words that the Admiral could not forget. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself. The human had known nothing about the Concorde, nothing about the barrier that would one day imprison his species, and yet he had spoken as if humanity belonged among the stars, as if they were meant to explore and discover and connect. Admiral Kethrix found himself respecting these strange creatures. Even as he feared them, the 6th year brought the thing the Concorde had dreaded most. A small object appeared outside the containment barrier, not through it, around it. The humans had found a way to bypass the barrier entirely. Using principles of physics that the Concorde had never imagined, it was a simple probe, no larger than a small vehicle. It carried no weapons, no threats. It carried only a message, written in the mathematical language that all intelligent species could understand.
We would like to talk.
Will you listen? Admiral Kethrix stared at the probe for a long time. Then he sent a message to the Council. The quarantine has failed. They have found a way through. I request further instructions. The Council's response took 3 days to arrive. During those 3 days, the humans sent more probes. Each one carried the same message. Each one demonstrated that the barrier could not hold them by the time the Council's orders arrived. Admiral Kethrix had already come to his own conclusion. He had spent 6 years watching these humans. He had seen them face an impossible obstacle and overcome it through pure determination. He had watched them share knowledge freely, unite around a common goal, and advance faster than any species in recorded history. These were not creatures that could be contained. The Council's message confirmed his thoughts, but it brought no comfort. We have decided to speak with them. One human will be permitted to leave Earth and address the Council. We will hear what they have to say. The Admiral looked at the small probe floating outside his barrier. Somewhere on that blue planet below, the humans were probably celebrating. They had done what everyone said was impossible. They had proven that even the mightiest civilization in the galaxy could not keep them caged, as he prepared to lower a portion of the barrier. Admiral Kethrix felt something he had not felt in centuries. He felt uncertain. For 300 years, he had known his place in the universe. He had known who the powerful were and who the weak were. He had known the order of things. Now, watching these impossible humans reach beyond their prison, he realized that the old order might be coming to an end. Something new was beginning, and he had no idea what it would mean for the galaxy. The debate over who should represent humanity lasted for 3 months. Governments argued. Scientists debated. Citizens voted in worldwide polls. Everyone had an opinion about who should speak for their species. Some wanted a great leader, someone who could show the galaxy that humans were strong and proud. Others wanted a scientist, someone who could demonstrate human intelligence and curiosity. Still others wanted an artist, someone who could share the beauty of human culture. In the end, they chose Marcus Webb. Marcus was 63 years old. He had gray hair, kind eyes, and a calm voice that made people want to listen. He had been a soldier in his youth, fighting in wars he no longer believed in. He had seen the worst that humans could do to each other, but he had also seen the best. After leaving the military, Marcus had become a philosopher. He spent decades thinking about what it meant to be human. He wrote books about peace, about reconciliation, about the possibility of redemption. He traveled the world speaking to anyone who would listen about the better future. Humanity could build. He was chosen because he represented both sides of humanity. He knew about violence because he had lived it. He knew about peace because he had chosen it. On the day of his departure, Marcus stood before a crowd of millions. His ship waited behind him, a small vessel that would carry him through the barrier and into the unknown. "I do not go as a hero," he told the crowd. "I go as a witness. I will tell them who we are, the good and the bad, the darkness and the light. I will not lie to them. I will not pretend we are perfect. But I will show them that we are trying." He carried only one item with him, besides the clothes on his back. It was a simple wooden box, sealed with a small lock. He did not tell anyone what was inside. The journey through the barrier took only moments. The journey to the Concorde station took 3 weeks. During that time, Marcus was alone with his thoughts. He reviewed everything he knew about the aliens. He practiced speeches in his head. He meditated for hours each day, preparing his mind for whatever was to come. When he arrived at the Concorde archives, he was greeted by The alien had specifically requested to meet the human ambassador. He had spent years studying humanity from a distance. Now he wanted to see one up close. Marcus looked at the 6-limbed creature before him. Velthorn looked at the soft, vulnerable human. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Marcus smiled and extended his hand. "Thank you for meeting me," he said. "I have been looking forward to this." Velthorn hesitated. He had read about this human custom, the pressing together of hands as a greeting. He knew it originated from ancient warriors, showing they carried no weapons. Slowly, he extended one of his own limbs. Marcus took it gently and shook it once. "You are not afraid," Velthorn observed. "Should I be? We have classified your species as the ultimate threat to galactic civilization. We imprisoned your entire solar system. Most beings would be angry, or terrified." Marcus nodded slowly. "I was both of those things once. When I was younger, when I was a soldier, but I have learned that fear and anger do not solve problems. They only create new ones." He released Velthorn's limb and looked around at the massive station. "Take me to your council. I have much to tell them." The council chamber was even more impressive than Marcus had imagined. 12 ancient beings sat in a circle around a central platform. Some had too many eyes. Some had no eyes at all. Some looked like creatures from human nightmares. Others were beautiful in strange, alien ways. Marcus walked to the center of the platform and stood before them. He felt small and vulnerable, but he did not let it show. For 3 days. They questioned him. They showed him the data they had collected about humanity, the violence, the wars, the destruction of their own environment. They showed him the statistics about human conflict, the millions who had died at the hands of their own kind. "You are dangerous," Elder Zindril declared. "Your own history proves it." Marcus did not argue. He nodded his head in agreement. "You're right," he said simply. The council fell silent. They had expected denials. They had expected excuses. They had not expected agreement. "We are dangerous," Marcus continued. We know this better than anyone. We have spent our entire history being dangerous to ourselves. We have committed terrible acts. We have caused immense suffering. We are not proud of these things." He paused and looked at each council member in turn. "But there is something your data does not show. There is something your classification system does not measure." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the wooden box. He set it on the floor and opened the lid. Inside were several small objects. Marcus lifted them one by one. "This," he said, holding up a rough piece of gray stone, "is a fragment of the Berlin Wall. For decades, it divided a single city into two nations. Families were separated. People were shot for trying to cross it. It stood for fear and oppression." He set the stone down. It fell. The people tore it down with their bare hands. East and West became one again. Enemies became friends. He lifted a small glass container filled with dark soil. "This is Earth from Hiroshima. We dropped a weapon on that city that killed over 100,000 people in an instant. It was one of the worst things we ever did." He set the container down gently. The city was rebuilt. It became a symbol of peace. People from around the world visit it now to remember and to promise that it must never happen again. He lifted a faded piece of paper covered in signatures. "This is a treaty." It was signed by nations that had been at war for generations. Millions had died in their conflicts. But they chose to stop. They chose to forgive. They chose to build something new together. Finally, he lifted a simple drawing made by a child. It showed two stick figures holding hands, one colored in blue and one in red. "My granddaughter made this. She is 8 years old. She knows about the barrier. She knows that alien civilizations exist. She drew this picture because she believes that someday humans and aliens will be friends." Marcus looked at the council. "This is what your data does not show. Every atrocity in our history was followed by humans who stood up and said never again. Every war was followed by peace. Every act of hatred was answered by acts of love." He closed the wooden box. "We are not defined by our capacity for destruction. We are defined by our capacity for change." The chamber was silent for a long time. Then, slowly, the council members began to talk among themselves. Their debate stretched for hours, then days. Word of the human ambassador's speech spread across the galaxy. Other species, those who had long felt powerless under the Concord's rule, began to listen. The humans did not want to conquer anyone. They wanted to connect. A coalition of younger species submitted a petition. They demanded that the quarantine be lifted. They wanted to meet these strange creatures who had chosen a philosopher as their champion. The vote was called. 6 members of the council voted to maintain the barrier. 5 voted to lower it. All eyes turned to Elder Zindril. The deciding vote was his. The ancient being rose slowly from his seat. He looked at Marcus's web, still standing on the central platform. The human had been there for days, refusing to rest, refusing to leave until a decision was made. "You truly believe your species can change?" Zindril asked. Marcus met his gaze without flinching. "We already have. We change every day. It is what we do." Zindril was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke the words that would reshape the galaxy. "Elder." Zindril had never spoken about his past. For 3,000 years he had kept his secrets locked away, hidden behind the calm mask of wisdom and authority. But as he looked at the human standing before him, he knew the time for secrets had ended. "I created the classification system," he said. The council fell silent. Even Marcus Webb looked surprised. "Long ago, when I was young by my species' standards, I watched civilizations rise and fall. I saw peaceful worlds destroyed by violent invaders. I saw intelligent species burn themselves to extinction in pointless wars. I saw the chaos that uncontrolled expansion could bring." He moved slowly to the center of the chamber, his ancient body supported by the floating platform that carried him everywhere now. "So I proposed a system. A way to identify threats before they could spread. A way to protect the galaxy from species that might bring destruction. The colors were my idea. Green for the harmless. Yellow for those who needed watching. Orange for the dangerous. He paused and looked directly at Marcus, read for the impossible. A theoretical classification? A category I hoped would never be used. The other council members shifted uncomfortably. They had not known this history. They had assumed the classification system was as old as the Concorde itself. I designed category red for a species that could not be stopped, Zindril continued. A species that would adapt to every challenge. That would bond with its enemies. That would refuse to accept any limitation placed upon it. I feared such a species because I believed they would destroy everything the Concorde had built. Let out a long, slow breath. When I first learned about humanity, I knew immediately what they were. Everything I had feared, everything I had tried to prevent, all of it was embodied in your species, Deathworlders, survivors, adapters, beings, who looked at a hostile universe and refused to surrender. Marcus said nothing. He simply listened. I was the one who recommended the quarantine, Zindril admitted. I was the one who pushed for containment. I believed that if we could isolate humanity, we could prevent the disaster I had spent millennia trying to avoid. He looked at the wooden box that Marcus still carried. I was wrong. The words echoed through the chamber. Ancient beings who had not shown surprise in centuries sat frozen, staring at their eldest member. I feared humanity would destroy us through conquest. I did not anticipate that they might transform us through example. He turned to face the full council. Look at what has happened since the quarantine began. Other species have watched the humans. They have seen how humans share knowledge freely. They have seen how humans unite in the face of adversity. They have seen how humans refuse to accept that. Anything is impossible. He gestured toward the petitions that had flooded in from across the galaxy. These younger species are not asking us to free the humans because they feel sorry for them. They are asking because they want to learn from them. They want to know the secret that allows a primitive species from a deadly world to advance faster than civilizations 1,000,000 years older. Zindril looked at Marcus once more. What is your secret, human? How do you do it? Marcus thought for a long moment before answering. We ask questions, he said finally. We look at the universe and we ask why. We look at problems and we ask how. We look at the impossible and we ask what if. He held up the child's drawing from his wooden box. And we imagine. We imagine things that do not exist yet. We imagine better worlds, better futures, better versions of ourselves. Then we work to make those imaginations real. Zindril nodded slowly. I have lived for 3,000 years. In all that time, I have never stopped being afraid. Afraid of change. Afraid of chaos. Afraid of species like yours who do not respect the boundaries we have built. He straightened his ancient body as much as he could. Today, I choose to stop being afraid. Cast his vote. The barrier would fall. The news spread across the galaxy, faster than light. The humans were free. The first human fleet to officially leave the Sol system was not made of warships. There were no weapons, no soldiers, no threats. The fleet was composed of exploration vessels, science ships, and cultural exchange craft. They carried the sum of human knowledge, offered freely to anyone who wished to learn. Marcus Webb returned to Earth as a hero, but he refused the title. He said he had done nothing except tell the truth. The real work, he insisted, was just beginning. And so it was. Humans spread across the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as partners. They were curious about everything, and their curiosity was infectious. Species that had grown stagnant over millions of years found themselves inspired by these strange creatures who never stopped asking questions. On the water world of Delphus, human engineers worked with native scientists to solve problems that had stumped them for centuries. On the forest planet of Varan, human artists collaborated with alien masters to create works of beauty that neither species could have imagined alone. Everywhere humans went, they brought their strange gift for hope. Not everything was easy. There were conflicts. There were misunderstandings. Some species resented the humans and their endless energy. Others tried to take advantage of human generosity. But the humans did not give up. They never gave up. It was not in their nature. 20 years after the barrier fell, a Council of 12 met to discuss a revision to the classification system. The old categories had never felt quite right since the humans arrived. Green, yellow, orange, red. These colors spoke of threat levels, of danger to be managed. The humans had shown that there was another way to think about species. A new category was proposed. It had no color associated with it. It was simply called catalyst. A catalyst. Species was defined as one whose presence fundamentally accelerated the growth of all others. Not through force, not through conquest, through inspiration, through collaboration, through the simple act of showing what was possible. Humanity was the first species to receive this designation. Velthorn lived long enough to see the changes that the humans brought. He was old now, his 6 limbs moving slowly, his eyes no longer as sharp as they once were. But he still taught at the archives, still shared his knowledge with young students from 100 different worlds. One day, a young archivist asked him a question that made him smile. Why were the humans ever classified as a threat? They seemed so friendly. Velthorn thought about everything he had witnessed. The fear, the quarantine, the ambassador's speech, the barrier falling. The years of growth and change that followed. We feared them because we did not understand them, he said finally. We looked at their world, their history, their nature, and we saw only danger. We did not see what they truly were. What are they truly? Velthorn activated a hologram. It showed Earth, the small blue planet where everything had begun. The pale blue dot, as one of their own poets had called it. They are dreamers, he said. They look at a hostile universe, a universe that has tried to kill them countless times, and they do not see enemies. They see potential friends they have not met yet. He watched the blue planet spin slowly in the holographic display. They asked a question that had never occurred to us. A question so simple that we missed it entirely. What question? Velthorn remembered the words he had heard so many years ago, spoken by a human who had never known that the stars were watching. They looked at the cosmos and asked, "What is out there, and can we be friends?" The young student thought about this for a long time. "That is a good question," she said finally. Velthorn nodded. His eyes were wet, a response he had learned from his human friends over the years. "Yes," he agreed. "It is the best question anyone has ever asked." Outside the archives, a human ship docked at the station. New visitors from Earth come to learn and share and connect. They carried gifts and questions, and that strange, wonderful, terrifying hope that seemed to follow humans wherever they went. The universe had changed. And somewhere, in the great pattern of stars and civilizations and endless possibilities, a small blue planet continued to spin. Its people were no longer prisoners. They were no longer feared. They were friends, and they were just getting started.